Good morning, Grace Church. For those of you who aren't sure who you're looking at, this is Dr. Dave with my COVID face on. Unfortunately, I had to shave my beard in order to be able to wear a protective mask on occasion when I'm seeing a sick person. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit today, not sit around and vainly mope about shaving my beard off that I'd had on for 30 years. That's only slightly painful. Might as well have cut my arm off. But I just wanted to spend a few minutes and talk about stuff that we've all had to give up. And I'm not going to lie, shaving my beard off was a big deal. I mean, it was kind of part of my identity and part of what I thought made me look better. This, ugly little non-chin hanging out in front and stuff like that. But it's been hard. It's been hard figuring out what it is we're supposed to do and all these things that we've had to give up. And so I wanted to take a minute and just talk about some of the things that we've had to give up. Like, for example, sports. No basketball, no spring baseball, the way things are going, maybe no football, who knows, certainly no going to the gym and playing sports with people, no concerts. There's a lot of people who have been looking forward to some concerts this summer that are all going to be canceled. Eating out, that's been really challenging for a lot of people. Some people have actually had to figure out what that funny room with the weird looking appliances in their house is for. Some of that's been good. Some of the people are like, am I ever going to survive again? Having to cook for myself. Travel. There have been some incredibly sad stories related to people traveling that didn't need to travel. They had to make that one last trip to visit grandma for fear that she might die, and then they infected grandma and they died. I mean, there's some terrible, horrible, ugly stories out there. Going out to see movies. The movie theaters in town are shuttered. People had a little more foresight and looked at their crystal ball 10 years ago, we could all be sitting in a drive-in movie theater in Twin, but who could have possibly imagined something like this? Going to church, that's been a huge thing. Some people have been saying, well, we should just go to church anyway. This is just the church being persecuted by the state, but that's not it at all. This is important that we not hang out in big groups to keep from spreading this horrible disease. And I think spring break and Mardi Gras both showed that. Visiting family and friends. I have a really good friend in Iowa who has purposefully not visited his parents because they're both older. One of them has a kind of a bad chronic illness, and the possibility of giving this to them would be, beyond his imagination. Seeing coworkers. Some of you might be excited about that. Some of you actually enjoy your coworkers and are missing getting to see them every day. This whole working from home business. And then, haircuts and beauty salons. I mean, no one in my family really needs beauty treatments, but I understand there's some of you out there that probably do. And some of you, it's just part of your day and part of the fun stuff that you like to do as part of life. And that's just the way that goes. But it's hard. There's lots of things that we've had to give up. And I think as the church, one of the things that's important for us is to do so with the right attitude, to do so graciously, to show the world that this isn't an us versus them moment. This isn't the man trying to control us or anything like that, but that this is an important moment in history for the church to step up and say, hey, we are willing to do what we need to do to be part of the community and to protect the public and do whatever that is. And so I wanted to take a couple of minutes and read a little bit from Paul and kind of what he has to say about stuff like that. Anyone who's listened to me preach very much knows that the two guys you can always count on me talking about are Paul and David. And so we're going to read a little bit from Paul this morning from Philippians chapter 4. For those of you who want to find Philippians, I would remind you of that important theological truth that God eats popcorn. So Philippians chapter 4, starting in verse 10, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you have renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you have been concerned, but have had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. So I would encourage you, as you're sitting around feeling bad about these things that you've had to give up, maybe you're missing spring baseball in those few months where the Tigers actually look good, or maybe you're missing the NBA, or whatever it is that you're missing. I would encourage you to take this passage and substitute whatever you want into it. I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I know the secret of being content in any and every circumstance, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And substitute those things that you've given up. And think about this notion of godly contentment. And it's not this devil may care, oh, who cares? NBA is stupid anyway. There's a proper grieving process that should occur for things that we've given up and are continuing to give up. If we're not doing that, then we're creating grief for ourselves down the road. There's a right and proper grieving process for giving these things up. And at the end of that proper grieving process is this notion of contentment that Paul's talking about. And so how is it that we're able to have this contentment, to be okay with the fact that we can't go down and watch movies at the $2 theater, or that we can't just go over to a friend's house? One of the kids was asking the other day, can we have friends over for a sleepover? And we had to say no, we can't do that. First of all, it's recognizing, and this is something that people have said, Bishop Tundag said it yesterday, other people have said it, that God's in control and he's not surprised by any of this whatsoever. Not long ago I preached on Jehovah Jireh and the notion that word means not just the God who provides, but the God who sees. And showed how in Romans 8 that it talks about God not only sees our current situation, but he sees what's coming up and prepares us for that. And so we can rest in the fact that as we have been following hard after God, that God has been preparing us for this moment. But more than that, we can spend time in the scriptures celebrating the things that God has done for us. And I think the very best place in scripture that we could spend time during this point in time is the Psalms. And you think about all the wonderful Psalms talking about the goodness of God, the glory of God, about God's provision, about the way he takes care of us and watches out for us. This would be a good time to not dwell on certain other Psalms, like bashing Babylonian babies' heads against the rocks. That's probably not where we want to direct our mind at this moment. But the point is to think on the things that God has given us, the goodness that he has been in our lives in the midst of this mess, in the midst of all these things that we're having to give up, all this stuff that we're having to endure, because we're stuck in our own homes. Some of us are having to go to work still. Even in our own homes, we can still be that light on a hill. Just because we're in our home doesn't mean we have to be under a bushel basket. And so in social media, there's so much nonsense, so much gloom and doom out there, and we can be a light to our friends, to our neighbors. There's nothing wrong with checking in on your next door neighbor, just calling them, knocking on the door, making sure people are doing good, and being the folks that are helping, dropping a box of something off at an elderly friend's house that needs something, whatever it is. We need to be willing to stand up, step up, take care of our friends, take care of our neighbors, and model that godly contentment that we're going to be able to get through this. Because we have the light of Jesus in our lives. And that's what's going to make the difference between us and everyone else that's struggling. So I just want to challenge you with this today, and I want to encourage you, as others have said, that God has not been surprised by this one moment, and that he is working in our lives and working in our church. And as we trust him and walk in him, he's going to bring us through this, and we're going to come out better than we went into it. You guys have a great day today.